Jake Morrison wiped the grease from his hands as another transport ship landed at New Terra Spaceport. The massive engines kicked up clouds of red dust that settled on everything within a mile. Jake had been working as a mechanic here for 2 years now, ever since he turned 18 and left the overcrowded cities of Earth behind. New Terra was supposed to be humanity's bright future among the stars. The reality was different. It was a dusty frontier world where nothing worked properly, and everyone complained about the heat. Jake spent his days fixing broken ships and his nights alone in his small workshop behind the main hangar. The other workers avoided him. They said he was too quiet, too strange. Jake preferred it that way. People were complicated. Machines made sense. You could fix a broken engine, but you could not fix broken people. The morning started like any other until Jake heard the explosion. A bright flash lit up the eastern sky, followed by a sound like thunder that rolled across the spaceport. Emergency sirens began wailing as colonial security vehicles raced toward the crash site. Jake watched the convoy disappear into the distance. Crashes happened sometimes when ships pushed their engines too hard or when pirates attacked cargo vessels. The security teams would investigate, file reports, and life would continue. Jake went back to repairing a faulty power coupling on a freight hauler. 3 hours later, Jake was walking home when he decided to take a shortcut through the rocky hills east of the spaceport. The crash site was supposed to be 5 miles out, but Jake could see smoke rising from much closer. His curiosity got the better of him. He found the wreckage in a small canyon hidden from the main road. The ship was tiny, barely large enough for one person. Its hull was twisted metal and melted plastic. Whoever had been flying it could not have survived. Jake was about to leave when he heard a sound. A soft whimpering came from behind a large boulder near the wreck. Jake approached carefully. Wild animals on New Terra could be dangerous. What he found was not a wild animal. It was a small creature about the size of a house cat, covered in golden fur with dark stripes. Its body was more like a reptile than a mammal, with 4 legs and a long tail. But its face was definitely feline, with large amber eyes that looked up at Jake with obvious intelligence. The creature was hurt. Its left front leg was bent at a wrong angle, and blood matted the fur on its side. When Jake moved closer, the creature did not run or attack. Instead, it looked at him with what could only be described as hope. Jake had always been good with animals. Back on Earth, he had rescued stray cats and dogs whenever he found them. This creature was clearly not from Earth, but it was injured and alone. Jake could not just walk away. He took off his work jacket and carefully wrapped the creature in it. The animal did not struggle. Instead, it seemed to understand that Jake was trying to help. Its amber eyes never left Jake's face as he carried it back to his workshop. Jake's workshop was attached to his small living quarters behind the spaceport. It was messy and cramped, filled with spare parts and half-finished projects. But it was private. No one bothered him here. He made a bed for the creature using old blankets and set up a small heater to keep it warm. The injured leg was definitely broken, but Jake had some medical supplies left over from his first aid training. He splinted the leg as carefully as he could. The creature watched everything Jake did with intense attention. When Jake offered it water, it drank. When he brought food, it ate carefully. But what amazed Jake most was how the creature seemed to understand his words. "You're going to be okay," Jake said softly as he changed the bandage on the creature's side. "I'll take care of you." The creature made a sound that was almost like a purr. Then it did something that made Jake's heart skip a beat. It reached out with its good front paw and gently touched Jake's hand. The gesture was so human, so full of gratitude, that Jake knew this was no ordinary animal. Over the next few days, Jake cared for his unexpected guest. He named the creature Leo because of its golden mane and proud bearing. Leo's injuries healed quickly, much faster than they should have. By the 3rd day, he was walking around the workshop, examining everything. With scientific curiosity, Leo was fascinated by Jake's tools and equipment. He would sit and watch for hours as Jake worked on various projects. More than once, Jake caught Leo manipulating small objects with his paws, as if trying to understand how they worked. On the fourth day, everything changed. Jake came home from work to find Leo sitting perfectly still in the center of the workshop. In front of him was a small crystalline device that pulsed with soft blue light. Jake had never seen anything like it. Leo looked up at Jake and made a series of sounds that were clearly not random. They had rhythm and pattern, like a language. Then Leo picked up the crystal device in his mouth and brought it to Jake. Jake hesitated. The device was clearly alien technology, possibly valuable or dangerous. But Leo looked at him with such trust that Jake could not refuse. He reached out and took the crystal. The moment Jake's fingers touched the device, his world exploded with images and sensations. He saw vast ships moving between stars, cities that floated in space, and beings that looked like Leo but stood upright, like humans. He saw wars fought with weapons that could destroy planets, and he saw a beautiful female of Leo's species leading fleets of warships across the galaxy. The visions lasted only seconds, but they left Jake gasping and confused. When his vision cleared, Leo was watching him with what looked like satisfaction. Jake looked down at the crystal device in his hand. It was no longer glowing. "What are you?" Jake whispered. Leo made those language sounds again, and this time, Jake almost understood them. Almost. Before Jake could process what had happened, he heard vehicles approaching outside. Through his small window, he could see the lights of colonial security vehicles surrounding his workshop. Someone was shouting orders through a bullhorn. "Jake Morrison, this is Director Williams. We know you have the alien creature. Come out, with your hands visible, and surrender it immediately." Jake looked at Leo, who had pressed himself against Jake's leg. The small alien was trembling, not from cold or injury, but from fear. Jake understood with sudden clarity that Leo was not just any alien creature. He was someone important, someone worth sending security forces to capture. The crystal device, in Jake's hand, grew warm. Leo looked up at him and made a sound that was clearly meant to be reassuring. Then the crystal began to glow again, brighter this time. Jake realized that his quiet life as a lonely mechanic was over. Whatever Leo really was, wherever he had come from, Jake was now part of something much larger and more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The voices outside grew louder and more insistent. Jake made his decision. He was not going to abandon Leo now, no matter what the consequences might be. Jake held the glowing crystal device as the security forces shouted outside his workshop. Leo pressed closer to his leg, making soft sounds that Jake now realized were not just animal noises. They were words in a language he did not know yet, somehow understood. "Stay calm," Leo was saying. "The gift will help you understand everything soon." Jake stared down at the small alien. "You can talk?" "I have always been able to talk," Leo replied. "Now you can finally hear me properly." The crystal in Jake's hand pulsed brighter. Suddenly more images flooded his mind. This time they were clearer and more organized. Jake saw Leo's true form, standing upright in elegant robes, addressing crowds of his own people. He saw vast libraries filled with knowledge from across the galaxy. He saw technologies that made human science look primitive. But most importantly, he saw Leo's memories of the past few weeks, the escape from his homeworld, the pursuit by enemy ships, the crash landing on New Terra, and through it all, the fear of being captured and used as a political tool by species that wanted to control his people. "You are not just any alien," Jake said quietly. "You are royalty." "I am Prince Corin of the Kitharan Empire," Leo replied with dignity that seemed strange coming from such a small creature. "But here, with you, I have been happy to simply be Leo." The knowledge from the crystal continued to flow into Jake's mind. He learned that the Kithaeron were an ancient species that had once ruled much of the known galaxy. They possessed technology and military power that other species could only dream of. But centuries ago, they had chosen to withdraw from galactic politics, tired of constant warfare and the burden of ruling over others. This withdrawal had been a mistake. In their absence, other species had grown bold and aggressive. The Drakmori, in particular, had become the dominant military force in several sectors. They wanted to bring the Kithaeron back into galactic affairs, but as subordinates rather than equals. The arranged marriage that Leo had fled was part of this plan. By forcing Leo to marry a Drakmori princess, they hoped to gain influence over the future of the Kithaeron Empire. Leo would have been little more than a prisoner with a fancy title. "The security forces outside," Jake said, understanding dawning on him. "They think you are just an animal they can hand over to whoever wants you." "Director Williams received orders from the Galactic Council," Leo explained. "They told him to capture any alien life forms and hold them for collection. They do not know what I really am, but they will learn soon enough when the Drakmori arrive." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. These people saw Leo as nothing more than an exotic pet or a specimen for study. They had no idea they were holding a prince whose mother commanded fleets that could reduce planets to ash. "Your mother," Jake said, as more memories from the crystal filled his mind. "She is the one they call the Void Huntress." Leo's amber eyes grew sad. "Empress Myra is the greatest military commander in galactic history. She has never lost a battle or failed to protect what she considers hers. But she is also my mother, and she will be very worried about me." The images in Jake's mind showed him exactly what Empress Myra was capable of. She had ended 3 separate galactic wars through superior tactics and overwhelming force. Enemy fleets surrendered rather than face her in battle. Entire species had sworn allegiance to the Kithaeron Empire rather than risk her displeasure. "She will come looking for you," Jake realized. "Yes," Leo said simply. "And when she arrives, she will want to know who helped her son and who tried to harm him." The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. The colonial authorities thought they were following proper procedures by detaining an alien creature. They had no idea they were about to face the wrath of the most feared warrior in the galaxy. Outside, Director Williams was losing patience. "Morrison, you have 30 seconds to come out, or we are coming in." Jake looked around his small workshop. Everything he owned was here. His tools, his projects, his quiet life away from the complications of other people. In 30 seconds, all of that would be gone. "The crystal device," he said to Leo. "What exactly did it do to me?" "It is called a memory bridge," Leo explained. "It allows compatible species to share knowledge, language, and understanding. My people use them to communicate with species that think differently than we do. The fact that it worked with you means that humans and Kithaeron are mentally compatible." "Compatible how?" "We think alike in important ways," Leo said. "Both our species value loyalty, courage, and protecting those we care about. The bridge recognized these similarities and created a connection between us." Jake understood now why Leo had trusted him so completely. The small alien had somehow known that Jake was the kind of person who would help rather than exploit. "What happens now?" Jake asked. "Now you must decide," Leo said seriously. "You can turn me over to Director Williams and hope that the Galactic Council treats me fairly. Or you can help me contact my mother and trust that she will remember your kindness when she arrives. What would happen to Earth if she comes here angry?" Leo was quiet for a long moment. "My mother does not make empty threats. If she believes that humans have harmed her son, she will make sure it never happens again." The crystal device in Jake's hand grew warm again. New images flowed into his mind, showing him the size and power of the Kithaeron military. Their ships were works of art and terror, designed to intimidate as much as destroy. Their weapons could turn asteroids into geometric patterns or reduce enemy fleets to scattered atoms. But Jake also saw something else in the memories. He saw Empress Myra as a mother, worried about her son's safety and happiness. He saw her genuine, love for her people and her desire to protect them from the dangers of galactic politics. "She is not a monster," Jake said, understanding. "No," Leo agreed. "She is a mother whose child is in danger. That makes her infinitely more dangerous than any monster." The sound of heavy boots approached the workshop door. Director Williams had run out of patience. "Jake Morrison, we are entering your premises now. Do not resist." Jake made his decision. He knelt down and looked Leo directly in the eyes. "How do we contact your mother?" Leo's expression filled with relief and gratitude. "The crystal device can send a message across space instantly. But you should know that once we do this, there will be no going back. You will be connected to the Kitharan Empire forever." "Then we better make sure it is a good connection," Jake said. He pressed the crystal device and felt Leo's mind touch his own. Together, they crafted a message that would travel faster than light across the galaxy, a message that would bring the most dangerous woman in known space to a small frontier world called New Terra. The workshop door burst open as colonial security forces flooded in, but it was too late. The message was already on its way to Empress Myra, the Void Huntress, telling her that her son was alive and that a human named Jake Morrison had shown him kindness. In 3 weeks, she would arrive, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 weeks had passed since the colonial security forces took Leo away from Jake's workshop. 3 weeks of silence and worry that ate at Jake's heart like acid. He had been placed under house arrest in a small apartment near the spaceport. With guards watching his every move, Director Williams visited him twice during those weeks. Both times he asked the same questions. Where did the alien creature come from? What was the crystal device? Did Jake know anything about the aliens? Origins or importance, Jake told him nothing. The memory bridge had given him knowledge that could change the course of galactic history, but Jake kept it locked away in his mind. He would not betray Leo's trust, no matter what threats the colonial authorities made. "You are making a serious mistake, Morrison," Williams had said during his last visit. "The Galactic Council has sent a delegation to collect the creature. They will be here in 2 days. If you cooperate now, things will go easier for you." But Jake knew the truth about this delegation. Through the crystal's shared memories, he understood that the Drakmori were coming to claim Leo as their prize. They would take him away and force him into the political marriage that would make him a prisoner for life. Jake spent his days staring out his apartment window at the spaceport, wondering if Leo was still alive. The guards had told him nothing about the creature's condition. For all Jake knew, the colonial medical team might have accidentally killed Leo while trying to study him. On the morning of the 21st day, Jake woke to find strange energy, readings appearing on the emergency broadcast system. The Colonial Weather Station was reporting unusual disturbances at the edge of the solar system. Ships were arriving, but they were not broadcasting standard identification codes. Jake's heart began to race. He pressed his hand against the window and whispered, "She is coming." Deep in space, beyond the orbit of New Terra's outermost moon, something massive was emerging from hyperspace. The colonial defense satellites detected it first, their automated systems screaming warnings about energy signatures unlike anything in their databases. Commander Sarah Mitchell sat in the New Terra Defense Command Center, watching her screens fill with impossible readings. "What am I looking at, Lieutenant Barnes?" she asked her sensor officer. "Unknown contacts, ma'am," Barnes replied, his voice tight with confusion. "They are big, bigger than anything we have on record. The computer cannot classify them. On the main view screen, shapes began to resolve out of the darkness of space. They were not like the angular functional ships that humans built. These vessels curved and flowed like living creatures, their hulls seeming to shift and move in the light of New Terra's sun. "How many ships are we looking at?" Mitchell asked. "Still counting, ma'am," Barnes said. "So far, we have identified 47 capital ships, over 100 smaller vessels, and one absolutely massive command ship that is 3 times larger than anything we have ever seen." Mitchell felt sweat beading on her forehead. The entire human colonial fleet in this sector had maybe 20 ships total. This unknown fleet could destroy every human settlement within 50 light years without breaking a sweat. "Are they responding to our communications?" she asked. "Negative, ma'am. They are broadcasting on frequencies we do not recognize, but they are not jamming our systems or taking any hostile actions. They are just sitting there." Meanwhile, on ID, the massive command ship that the humans could barely comprehend, Empress Myra stood in her private chambers, reading the message her son had sent 3 weeks earlier. She had read it hundreds of times, but each reading filled her with the same mixture of relief and cold fury. Her son was alive. That was the most important thing. But he was being held prisoner by aliens who had no idea what they had captured. Worse, these humans seemed to be cooperating with the Drakmori, the species that had tried to kidnap her child in the first place. The message also contained something else, the genetic signature of the human who had helped Koran. Jake Morrison, a young mechanic who had shown kindness to an injured creature without knowing who or what it was. This human had shared a memory bridge with her son, creating a mental connection that marked him as a friend to the Catharan people. Myra touched the crystal device that contained her son's message. Through it, she could feel the echo of Jake, Morrison's thoughts and emotions. The human was brave, loyal, and compassionate. He had risked his own safety to help a stranger. These were qualities that the Empress respected, regardless of what species they came from, but respect did not mean she would show mercy to those who had threatened her child. "Admiral Davis," she said to her chief military officer, "what do our scouts report about this human colony?" "It is a small frontier settlement, Your Majesty," Davis replied. "Perhaps 50,000 residents total. Their technology is primitive but functional. They have basic space travel and energy weapons, but nothing that could threaten even our smallest ships. And their military strength? Negligible. A few patrol boats and orbital defense platforms. The entire human presence in this system could be eliminated in less than an hour." Myra nodded. She had expected as much. Humans were clearly a young species, just beginning to explore the galaxy. Under normal circumstances, she might have been impressed by their rapid expansion across so many worlds, but these were not normal circumstances. "What about the Drakmori delegation?" she asked. 3 ships, including a heavy cruiser. They arrived yesterday and are currently in orbit around the planet. They seem to believe they are here to collect Prince Koran. A smile touched Myra's lips, but it was not a pleasant expression. "They are about to learn how wrong they are." On New Terra, Director Williams was having the worst day of his administrative career. First, an unknown alien fleet had appeared at the edge of the system, refusing all communication attempts. Then the Drakmori delegation had begun making increasingly aggressive demands about the creature in colonial custody. General Voss, the leader of the Drakmori delegation, was a 7-foot-tall reptilian nightmare with scales like black armor and eyes like burning coals. He had made it clear that he considered humans to be an insignificant species that existed only by the grace of more advanced civilizations. "You will transfer the creature to our custody immediately," Voss had demanded during their morning meeting. "Any delay will be reported to the Galactic Council as obstruction of official business." Williams had tried to explain the situation with the unknown fleet, but Voss had dismissed his concerns. "Irrelevant," the general had said. "Whatever primitive species has arrived here will not interfere with Drakmori operations." Now Williams stood in his office, watching the sensor displays that showed 2 potentially hostile fleets facing each other in the space above his world. The unknown aliens had made no aggressive moves, but their very presence was terrifying. The Drakmori were growing impatient and had begun powering up their weapon systems. And somewhere in the middle of it all, a small alien creature sat in a colonial detention cell, possibly holding the key to preventing a war that could destroy everything Williams had spent years building. His communication system chimed. "Sir." His secretary's voice came through the speaker. "We are receiving a transmission from the unknown fleet. They are requesting to speak with you directly." Williams straightened his uniform and tried to look professional. "Put them through." The main screen in his office flickered to life, and Williams found himself looking at a face that would haunt his dreams for years to come. The being on the screen appeared almost human, but there was something in her amber eyes that spoke of power beyond imagination. "I am Empress Myra of the Kithaeron Empire," she said in perfect, unaccented English. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." Williams tried to speak, but found his mouth had gone completely dry. The Empress continued, her voice remaining calm and polite. "I have come to collect my son and to meet the human who showed him kindness. You have 1 hour to arrange this meeting. The key." Transmission ended, leaving Williams staring at a blank screen. Outside his office windows, he could see the Drakmori ships beginning to move into attack positions. The hour of reckoning had begun. Director Williams had 30 minutes left when General Voss stormed into his office without permission. The Drakmori commander's black scales gleamed under the artificial lights, and his burning eyes fixed on Williams with barely controlled rage. "What is the meaning of this delay?" Voss demanded, his voice like grinding metal. "I ordered you to prepare the creature for transfer hours ago." Williams tried to maintain his composure. "General, we have a situation. There is an unknown fleet in our system, and they have made contact. They claim the creature belongs to them." Voss laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Impossible. The creature is a primitive life form from an uncharted world. No advanced species would claim such a worthless animal." The fleet leader identified herself as Empress Myra of the Kithaeron Empire, Williams said carefully. The change in Voss was immediate and dramatic. His scales darkened from black to deep purple, and his eyes widened with what could only be described as fear. "That name means nothing," he said, but his voice had lost its confident edge. Williams had done his research in the past hour. The colonial database had very little information about the Kithaeron, but what it did contain was terrifying. Ancient military records spoke of a species that had once dominated vast sections of the galaxy before mysteriously withdrawing from all. "Contact centuries ago?" "General," Williams said slowly, "if this really is the Kithaeron Empire, perhaps we should reconsider our approach." Voss straightened to his full 7-foot height. "The Drakmori bow to no one. If these Kithaeron want the creature, they can negotiate with the Galactic Council like any civilized species. Until then, the creature remains in Drakmori custody." 20 minutes later, Jake found himself being escorted from his apartment by colonial guards. Director Williams had personally come to collect him, looking like a man walking to his own execution. "Morrison," Williams said as they walked toward the detention center, "I need you to understand something. What happens in the next few hours could determine whether this colony survives or becomes a battlefield. I am told you formed some kind of connection with the alien creature." "His name is Leo," Jake said quietly. "Whatever his name is, an empress claims he is her son. She wants to meet you personally. I am hoping you can help us avoid a war." Jake looked at the director with surprise. 3 weeks ago, this man had treated him like a criminal. Now he was asking for help. They reached the detention center where Leo had been held. Jake's heart broke when he saw his friend. The small alien was confined in a sterile medical bay, connected to monitoring equipment and obviously weak from weeks of captivity. But his amber eyes lit up when he saw Jake. "My friend." Leo said in his musical language. The memory bridge allowed Jake to understand every word. I knew you would come. Are you hurt? Jake asked, kneeling beside the medical bed. Only tired, Leo replied. But my mother is here. I can feel her presence like sunlight after a long darkness. Director Williams watched this exchange with growing amazement. You really can communicate with him. We understand each other, Jake confirmed. He looked at Leo seriously. What happens now? Now we go to meet the most dangerous woman in the galaxy, Leo said with a small smile, and we hope she likes you. The transport to the Kitharan flagship took place in a small shuttle that felt like a toy compared to the massive ships surrounding it. Jake pressed his face to the viewing port as they approached the command vessel, trying to comprehend its size. The ship was over 3 kilometers long and shaped like a massive predator frozen in the moment of striking. Its hull was not the cold metal of human ships, but something that seemed almost alive, flowing and organic. Weapon ports along its sides glowed with soft amber light, like the eyes of sleeping dragons. The Night Stalker, Leo said reverently. My mother's personal ship. It has never been defeated in battle. As their shuttle entered the docking bay, Jake felt the weight of history pressing down on him. This ship had seen battles that reshaped the galaxy. Its commander had made decisions that affected the lives of billions. And somehow, a lonely mechanic from New Terra was about to meet her face to face. The docking bay itself was a work of art. The walls curved gracefully upward, covered in patterns that seemed to shift and move in the ambient light. Strange but beautiful plants grew in carefully tended gardens between the landing platforms. The air smelled of flowers and something else Jake could not identify. Kitharan crew members moved through the bay with fluid grace. They were taller than Leo, standing upright like humans, but retaining the feline features and golden fur. They wore uniforms that looked more like elegant robes than military gear. Each one Jake saw was beautiful in a way that made his chest tight. A female officer approached them. She had Leo's amber eyes but stood nearly 6 feet tall. Prince Corrin, she said with obvious relief. Her Majesty has been very worried about you. I am well, Captain Riley, Leo replied formally. This is Jake Morrison, the human who helped me. Captain Riley studied Jake with intense curiosity. The Empress is waiting to meet you, human. I should warn you that she is not in the best of moods. They walked through corridors that felt more like a palace than a warship. The walls were covered with art from dozens of worlds, and soft music played from hidden speakers. Gardens and fountains appeared around every corner. Jake had expected a military vessel. This was something far more sophisticated. Your people built all this? Jake asked Leo. My people have had centuries to perfect our technology, Leo replied. We believe that beautiful things make life worth living, even in times of war. They stopped before a set of doors that were clearly important. 2 guards stood at attention, their weapons looking more like works of art than tools of violence. Captain Riley announced them, and the doors opened silently. Jake stepped into a room that took his breath away. It was circular and domed, with a transparent ceiling that showed the stars above. Gardens grew along the walls, filled with flowers from worlds Jake could not imagine. In the center of the room, surrounded by holographic displays showing tactical information from across the galaxy, stood Empress Myra. She was not what Jake had expected. The woman who turned to face him was tall and elegant, with flowing golden hair marked by natural dark streaks that reminded him of Leo's fur. Her amber eyes held intelligence and power that made Jake want to step backward. But when she looked at Leo, her expression filled with such obvious love and relief that Jake understood she was a mother first and an empress second. My son, she said softly, kneeling down as Leo ran to her. I was so worried. I am safe, mother, Leo replied, pressing against her. Jake took care of me. Empress Myra looked up at Jake. and he felt as if those amber eyes could see straight through to his soul. When she spoke, her voice was cultured and intelligent, but underneath it was an edge that reminded Jake exactly who he was talking to. "So, you are the human who showed kindness to my child," she said, rising to her full height. "I am very interested to meet you, Jake Morrison." Jake stood in the center of Empress Myra's private chamber, trying not to show how nervous he felt. The most powerful military commander in known galactic history was studying him, like he was an interesting puzzle she wanted to solve. "Please, sit," she said, gesturing to a comfortable chair that had not been there moments before. Jake realized the furniture in the room could move and reshape itself. "Would you like something to drink? We have excellent tea from 17 different worlds." The politeness of the offer caught Jake off guard. "Just water, please." A small table appeared beside his chair with a crystal glass filled with clear, cool water. Jake took a sip and was amazed at how pure it tasted, better than anything he had ever had on New Terra. "You seem surprised by our hospitality," Empress Myra observed, settling into her own chair. Leo curled up beside her like the cat he resembled, clearly happy to be home. "I expected something more military," Jake admitted. "Your ship is beautiful, but I thought a warship would be different." "Beauty and function are not enemies," the Empress replied. "My people learned long ago that surrounding ourselves with lovely things makes us better warriors, not worse ones. A person who fights to protect beauty will always defeat someone who fights only for conquest." Jake looked around the room again, seeing it with new understanding. The gardens and art were not decorations. They were reminders of what the Kitharin fought to protect. "My son tells me you are a mechanic, Empress," Myra continued, "that you work with machines and understand how things function." "Yes, Your Majesty," Jake said, not sure what title he should use. "Just Myra is fine when we are speaking privately," she said with a slight smile. "Tell me, Jake Morrison, what do you see when you look at me?" The question was clearly important, though Jake did not understand why. He studied her carefully, trying to see past the elegant appearance and obvious intelligence. "I see someone who loves her son very much," he said finally, "and someone who has made difficult decisions that most people could never make." Interesting. Most beings see only the stories they have heard. The Void Huntress, the woman who ended 3 galactic wars, the commander whose very name makes enemy fleets surrender without fighting. Her amber eyes grew thoughtful. "You see the person, not the legend." "Legends are just stories people tell," Jake said. "You are real." Myra laughed, a sound like silver bells. "You are quite right. I am very real, and I have a very real problem that you may be able to help me solve." She gestured, and the air in the room filled with holographic displays showing star maps, fleet positions, and political information that made Jake's head spin. "The galaxy has grown comfortable in our absence," she explained. "Species that once feared to speak our name now believe we have grown weak and withdrawn." Jake saw images of the Drakmori fleets, massive and aggressive, pushing into territories that had once belonged to other species. He saw trade routes controlled by force and colonies stripped of resources by those strong enough to take them. "The Drakmori want to force us back into galactic politics," Myra continued, "but as subordinates, not as the power we once were. My son's kidnapping was meant to be the first step in that plan." "But Leo escaped," Jake said. "Yes, and in doing so, he created an opportunity I had not expected." The holographic displays changed, showing detailed information about human colonies and expansion patterns. "Your species is remarkable, Jake Morrison. In just a few centuries, you have spread across dozens of worlds. You lack advanced technology or military might, yet you continue to grow and thrive." Jake felt uncomfortable under her intense scrutiny. "We are just trying to find places to live." "You are doing much more than that," Myra corrected. You are proving that expansion and growth do not require conquest and domination. Your colonies trade freely with each other and with alien species. You adapt to new environments instead of destroying them. You seek cooperation instead of submission. The displays showed human settlements on worlds with different atmospheres, different gravity, different challenges. In each case, humans had found ways to work with local conditions and native species, rather than simply imposing their will. My people withdrew from the galaxy because we grew tired of ruling through fear, Myra explained. But in our absence, others have filled that role with far less wisdom or restraint. The Drakmori enslave entire species. The Kelthak strip mine worlds until they are lifeless rocks. The Vorthon treat other species like livestock. Jake began to understand where this conversation was leading. You want to come back? I want to prevent a war that will destroy billions of lives, Myra corrected. The current galactic order is unstable. The aggressive species are growing bolder while the peaceful ones are being conquered or absorbed. Eventually, this will lead to a conflict that makes our ancient wars look like minor disputes. But if you return to active politics, would that not also cause a war? If we return as conquerors, yes, Myra agreed. But what if we returned as protectors instead? What if we allied ourselves with a species that understands cooperation better than domination? The full scope of what she was suggesting hit Jake like a physical blow. You want to ally with humanity? I want to offer humanity a choice, Myra said carefully. Partnership with the Catharan Empire, protection for your colonies, and access to technologies that would advance your civilization by centuries. In return, you would serve as intermediaries between us and other species. You would help us return to galactic affairs without triggering the fear and resentment that our direct involvement would cause. Jake's mind raced. And if we refuse? Then, you continue as you are, Myra said simply. We would not force this alliance on you. But you should understand that the Drakmori and others will not ignore your rapid expansion forever. Eventually, they will decide that humanity is growing too strong and take action to limit your development. The holographic displays changed again, showing projections of future galactic conflicts. Without protection, human colonies would become targets for aggressive species seeking resources and territory. Why me? Jake asked. I am just a mechanic from a frontier world. Surely there are more important humans you should be talking to. You are here because my son trusts you, Myra replied, and because you showed kindness to a stranger without any thought of reward. Those are qualities that my people value highly. Leo stirred beside his mother. Jake did not help me because I was a prince, he said softly. He helped me because I was hurt and alone. That is the kind of person humans can be at their best. It is also the kind of person we need as our first human ambassador, Myra added. If you are willing. Jake nearly choked on his water. Ambassador? Someone needs to present this proposal to your government, Myra explained. Someone who understands both human and Kithran perspectives. Someone who has earned the trust of both species. Before Jake could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Captain Riley's voice came through the communication system, urgent and concerned. Your Majesty, the Drakmori ships are powering weapons and moving toward the planet. General, Voss is demanding immediate surrender of Prince Corran and threatening to begin bombardment of civilian targets if we do not comply. Myra's expression did not change, but Jake felt the temperature in the room drop several degrees. When she spoke, her voice carried the cold authority that had made entire Starfleets surrender. It seems General Voss has made a critical error in judgment, she said quietly. He appears to believe that threatening innocent civilians will somehow intimidate us into submission. She stood gracefully, and Jake could see the transformation from concerned mother to galactic military commander. Captain Riley, signal the fleet. Disable the Drakmori ships. Weapons and engines only. Leave their crews alive, but make sure they understand exactly who they are dealing with. At once, Your Majesty. Myra turned back to Jake, who was staring at her in amazement. You just ordered an attack on a Galactic Council delegation. I ordered the protection of innocent civilians from military threats, she corrected. The Galactic Council will understand the difference, even if General Voss does not. Through the transparent ceiling, Jake could see the battle beginning. Kithaeron ships moved with impossible grace and precision, their weapons striking with surgical accuracy. Within minutes, the Drakmori vessels were dead in space, their weapons destroyed and their engines offline. And now, Empress Myra said with satisfaction, the galaxy will remember exactly who the Kithaeron are and what we are capable of when properly motivated. She looked at Jake seriously. The demonstration is over, Jake Morrison. Now we must decide what comes next. Will you help us forge a new future, or will you return to your quiet life as a mechanic? Jake realized that his answer would not just determine his own fate, but potentially the future of human civilization among the stars. Jake watched the disabled Drakmori ships floating helplessly in space and felt the weight of history pressing down on him. The most powerful woman in the galaxy was waiting for his answer, and somehow that answer would shape the future of humanity. Among the stars. I have a question, Jake said finally. If I agree to be your ambassador, what exactly would that mean? Empress Myra gestured, and the holographic displays showed detailed images of the Kithaeron homeworld. Jake saw cities that floated among the clouds, libraries that contained the knowledge of 1,000 species, and academies where beings from across the galaxy came to learn. It would mean dividing your time between Earth and Thyros Prime, she explained. Learning our ways, understanding our technology, and helping to build bridges between our peoples. It would mean becoming the first human to see the full scope of what the Kithaeron Empire has to offer. And in return, humanity gains protection, technology, and trade opportunities that would advance your civilization by centuries, Myra replied. But more importantly, you gain a true ally in a galaxy that is becoming increasingly dangerous. Jake looked at Leo, who had been quietly watching the conversation. What do you think? I think, Leo said carefully, that you have already proven yourself to be the kind of person who makes difficult choices for the right reasons. Whatever you decide, I will support. Before Jake could respond, Captain Riley's voice came through the communication system again. Your Majesty, we are receiving a transmission from the planet. Director Williams is requesting permission to speak with you. Put him through, Myra said. The holographic display showed Williams in his office, looking pale and shaken. Behind him, Jake could see other colonial officials and what appeared to be military advisors from Earth. Empress Myra, Williams began formally, I want to apologize for any misunderstanding regarding your son. We had no idea of his true identity or importance. Understood, Myra replied coolly. You were following standard protocols for contact with unknown species. However, the Drakmori delegation's threat against civilian targets was completely unacceptable. Yes, Your Majesty. We have been in contact with Earth Command and the United Colonies Council. They have authorized me to begin formal diplomatic discussions with the Kithaeron Empire. Jake felt a surge of relief. At least the human government was smart enough to recognize an opportunity when they saw one. Before we begin those discussions, Myra said, I want you to know that Jake Morrison has been offered the position of first human ambassador to the Kithaeron Empire. His acceptance or refusal of this role will significantly influence how those diplomatic discussions proceed. All eyes turned to Jake. Through the display, he could see Williams and the other officials staring at him with expressions ranging from hope to desperation. The weight of responsibility felt crushing. I need to know something, Jake said to Myra. If I do this, if I help forge this alliance, what happens to people like Leo? Will your people still be able to live quietly, if they choose? The question seemed to surprise Myra. Explain what you mean. Leo was happy in my workshop, Jake said. He liked fixing things, and learning how human technology worked. He did not want to be a prince with political responsibilities. Will there be room in this new alliance for Kithaeron who just want to live normal lives? Myra's expression softened. You are worried about my son's happiness. I am worried about everyone's happiness, Jake corrected. Humans, Kithaeron, and anyone else who gets caught up in galactic politics. Will this alliance protect people's right to choose their own lives? Yes, Myra said firmly. One of the reasons we withdrew from galactic affairs was because ruling an empire gave our people no choice but to be warriors and administrators. This alliance would allow both our species to pursue different paths while supporting each other. Leo looked up at his mother. Jake taught me that there is honor in simple work done well. I would like to continue learning from him, even if I must also fulfill my duties as a prince. And you shall, Myra promised. The alliance I envision would include exchange programs, joint research projects, and shared colonies where both species could live and work together. Jake made his decision. I accept the position of ambassador. The relief in the room was immediate and obvious. Williams actually sagged in his chair, while Myra smiled with genuine warmth. Excellent, she said. Now let us discuss the terms of this alliance. The next several hours were spent in intense negotiations. Earth's representatives, speaking through Williams and a rapidly assembled team of diplomats, worked out the basic framework of the Kithaeron-Human Alliance. Humanity would receive immediate protection from aggressive species, access to selected Kithaeron technologies, and favorable trade agreements. In return, humans would serve as diplomatic intermediaries between the Kithaeron Empire and other galactic powers, help establish joint colonies, and provide cultural exchange opportunities. The alliance would be defensive in nature, designed to protect both species rather than to threaten others. But the galaxy would understand that an attack on human colonies would be considered an attack on Kithaeron interests. As the negotiations concluded, Myra made a final announcement that would be broadcast across the galaxy within hours. The Kithaeron Empire formally recognizes the Human Colonial Union as a sovereign power and announces the establishment of a mutual defense and cooperation treaty. Any species that threatens human interests will face the full response of the Kithaeron. Military. The effect was immediate. Within minutes, messages began arriving from across the galaxy. Some were congratulations from species that had suffered under Drakmori aggression. Others were angry protests from powers that had hoped to limit human expansion. But the message was clear to everyone. Humanity was no longer alone in the galaxy. Jake found himself standing on the observation deck of the Night Stalker, watching, as the Kithaeron fleet prepared to return home. Half the ships would remain to establish a permanent presence in human space, while the others would carry news of the alliance back to Tyros Prime. Leo joined him at the viewing port, still small, but somehow seeming more confident than before. Are you ready for this? Leo asked. I have no idea, Jake admitted. A month ago, I was just a mechanic who wanted to be left alone. Now I am supposed to represent humanity to an empire that spans half the galaxy. You will do well, Leo said, confidently. You understand something that most beings never learn. What is that? That the strongest alliances are built not on fear or need, but on genuine friendship and respect. Jake looked out at the stars, thinking about everything that had changed since he found a small injured creature in the wreckage of a crashed ship. He had saved Leo's life, but in return, Leo had given him something far more valuable: purpose, direction, and the chance to help build a future where different species could work together instead of constantly fighting for dominance. You know, Jake said thoughtfully, I think this is going to be the beginning of something amazing. Yes, Leo agreed, and the galaxy will never be the same. As the Night Stalker prepared to enter hyperspace for the journey to Tyros Prime, Jake Morrison, former mechanic turned galactic ambassador, prepared for the adventure of several lifetimes. Behind them, New Terra began implementing the technologies and protections that would transform it from a struggling frontier colony into a thriving center of interspecies cooperation. The little cub had taken his gift of kindness and returned with the galaxy's most dangerous Tigress, but she had not come as a conqueror. She had come as a mother, a protector, and ultimately, as a friend. And in the years that followed, that friendship would reshape the destiny of countless worlds and species, proving once again that sometimes the smallest acts of compassion can have the most profound consequences. The galaxy had indeed learned to remember exactly who the Kithaeron were, but more importantly, it had learned who humans could be when given the chance to show their true nature, partners, allies, and friends to anyone willing to accept them as equals.